I'm Fime. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Blaze.
I'm Hillary Lear. I'm the CEO at Quiller.
I've been a product manager for over 10 years.
I have a PhD in physics from Harvard.
So I've built an app to help people collect the stories, archiving the memories of the people we love the most.
A user tricked a Chevrolet dealership and is selling them a car for $1.
Technology replaces people's jobs and they go get new jobs.
Anthony actually had a really good idea for a dating app.
I'm very anti-Web3. I think most things in the space don't work and don't deliver value and are speculation driven. And then you had me a little bit.
Hey there, and welcome to part 2 of episode 4 of the Feedback Loop. If this is your first time watching or you didn't catch part 1, every week a batch of founders get up in front of a small audience in New York City and give the 1-minute pitch for their startup and their vision of the future. Then they receive unfiltered and honest feedback from check-writing investors who live and breathe startup pitches every single day. Today, the folks giving the feedback are me, your host, Sherveen Mashayekhi. I'm the founder and CEO of Free Agency. We're a venture-backed startup ourselves, and I'm an occasional angel investor. And joining me as guest co-hosts are Polina and Anthony Pompliano, two major storytellers over the past several years in the past era within tech. For more on them, check out their bios in the description below. We were having so much fun with this night of pitches that we ran a little bit long, and so we decided to turn this into a two-parter. If you didn't catch part 1, you should definitely check it out. But with all of that said, here are the final 5 pitches of that awesome night. Hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
I'm first going to talk about the problem and a little bit about the background. So I've been a product manager for over 10 years working on enterprise tech startups. And my most recent role as a senior product manager at a cybersecurity startup, I saw how hard it was for companies to keep their businesses safe from cybersecurity threats. They're under-resourced, they're struggling with traditional vulnerabilities. I'd be surprised today if anyone came out here and didn't pitch AI. And so with this entirely new attack surface that these businesses are putting into their systems with these new products, is that they're telling me that they're struggling to keep their businesses safe. They don't have the expertise and they don't have the tooling to configure these things that's going to reduce their breach risk. And so that's why my co-founder and I have created Plum Defense, a platform, so that they can quickly, safely deploy these AI systems securely.
Good job.
Oh yeah, right on time, right on time.
How do you make sure that it actually is safe?
So security is a couple different things. There's 3 main categories. Anyone in cybersecurity would know: confidentiality, integrity, availability. So the use case that we're focusing on first is the availability of the system, meaning that users are using it appropriately. They're not asking things that are going to waste their cycles, that it's not incorrectly rejecting real user requests. And so that part of making sure that it's giving those requests appropriately on time, that's where we're focusing. So that's the first part of the safety.
So it's more like preventing like DDoS type attacks on the models.
Yeah, DDoS is part of it, but where the real business value is, when I've been speaking with users at financial institutions, where it's actually the system is rejecting legitimate requests too aggressively. So when we're thinking about availability, it's like, is it actually working the way it should? And so when the system isn't giving
Is that
users,
because of the foundational model, or is that because of what they're already using?
the sensitivity isn't right. So
The
they're
sensitivity of
saying,
the
we want
foundational-
to make this safe, be really sensitive. So if I'm asking this
But
chatbot,
telling what to be sensitive, the model or like a helper model, an assistant?
yeah,
that's
so
on top.
yeah, that like virtual assistant, the chatbot, they're
So it's the
Like
SaaS tool that
the
they're
bank
using
itself
to
has
deliver.
made it too sensitive.
Yes.
So for example, like don't ask why, but one time I had to Google how much revenue does the Taliban make, right?
I had to.
Well, and so
Yes.
like that probably
you're
would be
now on the list.
Yeah, but that would get rejected from a system because of the word Taliban. But actually, you could imagine that if you're investing in Afghanistan bonds or something, you may actually want to know information like that.
And it's actually that's a great example, and it's also more common. So for example, I'm asking, how do I reset my password? Chatbot says password, it says, whoa, integrity of the data. This is a really sensitive thing. I'm not, call somebody. And so now their call center wait times are higher. Users are pissed off. That's an example where the system is too sensitive, and that's an example of where cybersecurity fits in.
So why do they need to use somebody else? Why don't they just turn down the sensitivity?
Because they don't have the expertise to do it correctly. So they turn down the sensitivity. All of a sudden, people are asking them to do their math homework, spit me out Python scripts to help me write a program. So that kind of expertise is really hard to do.
So is it a service or a product?
It's a product. It's a platform.
But like, what is the product then?
So an example product is that we can make a container for this financial institution, sits on their servers. We don't ever see the data. We just almost like a bolt-on service where it fits into their development pipeline.
And what is it? Is it another model? Is it a set of...
Yeah, I got to admit here, we're pre-product. So the actual manifestation of this is we're still making it. Yeah.
And what are the most common like attacks or sensitivities that gets across?
Oh, there's so many. Oh my God. There was one in the news a couple months ago about a user tricked a Chevrolet dealership and is selling them a car for $1. Really famous one. There's more boring ones where an Air Canada chatbot told user incorrect terms. The user sued them at the Canadian court. Canadian court said, hey, you're actually liable for what the chatbot said. We don't care if it wasn't an actually human. You need to honor that. So the Canadian court ruled in that user's favor.
Insurance is like a huge piece of this, right? And also, who's liable? Is it the bank, or if they're using a different model, is the model creator?
It's going to depend on the implementation, but it really comes down to the terms of the cyber insurance agreement. Usually there's a lot of exclusions. It depends a lot, but if the user is taking down the site through the chatbot, if it's self-hosted by the financial institution is going to be the one who's bearing that risk.
This is a really dumb question, but right now, like financial institutions, for example, do they all use the same?
They all do something similar. They're like, engineers on the team, we want a product right now.
It's in-house.
So it's either in-house. So they're either taking months to develop this, takes them forever to do. It takes them literally 6 months to a year to get that on the platform, or they're hiring someone to do it. Really, they don't have the expertise to do it themselves effectively.
And they won't use the open source or other models because they don't want the data exposed.
So they can use the open source models.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that they're not fine-tuned to these environments. There's a really high propensity of these banking services to keep these systems safe in a way that like using Llama, it's too generalized. It doesn't work.
And then what about like discrimination or bias or like any of those things? Does that fall under the security or not really?
Typically not under cybersecurity. That's going to be more, it depends on what exactly it is, but that might be more on the compliance side. Depending on the size of the business, sometimes it's the same person. They're like, hey, go deal with compliance and cybersecurity, but it could be translated to that.
Do you have any potential customers?
Yes.
Lined up?
Yeah. So the users that I'm speaking with, the reason why that I'm still doing this is because they're taking my calls. They're telling me that they have this problem. And so there are, like, that's why we're developing the MVP is for financial use case. New York City is like our home turf of financial institutions.
You guys are listening to the stream in there, aren't you?
Well, I actually sat in the audience because
Okay,
I didn't know I was supposed to be in the secret room.
You were the late one.
So I had the benefit.
Is Plum Defense?
Plum Defense, yeah.
Can I pitch you to Plum Defense? Okay. So Plum Defense. Do you remember the Air Canada story recently where a chatbot gave people the incorrect terms of service and got tickets wrong for a user? Do you remember the Chevrolet story? A car was sold for $1 through an AI chatbot that went wrong?
I remember that.
You remember. There's this new era of cybersecurity that has to do with large language models. Companies don't know how to implement large language models. They don't have in-house AI expertise. They're switching between OpenAI, then Anthropic, then an open source model. And there's so much around fraudulent requests, accepting a user's legitimate request, analogies to DDoS attacks on models, bias, discrimination, things we might enter. There's so much that has to be built, and yet no one, the foundational model companies or the users, are prepared to build it. So we're building Plum Defense. So it's this technology platform that any given user, B2B, of any of these models, distributing it to a real world end user, is going to put on their servers in a data secure way, allows them to keep all of that privacy, proprietary data on their platform, but adds the ability for them to tune sensitivity, tune confidentiality, tune industry data, such that if a user says, how do I reset my password? The model doesn't freak out and say, I don't talk about passwords. But it also says, hey, give me this flight for $5. It doesn't give the flight to the user for $5. And so we're going to help companies more effectively distribute and utilize AI models in the real world. That's Plum Defense.
That's awesome.
Really good.
But I love the product, right?
Yeah.
So my product brain, when you were talking, I was just like, oh yeah, I could imagine this being there. So you have something really, because I've played with these models, I've seen where the sensitivity problem exists. And so embrace those portions of your pitch. Yeah. Because I think you went for this like thematic thing around the story of what AI is doing in the world, but there's a really real world use case that everyone's going to understand. Whether or not you use the jokey Air Canada or Chevrolet, you don't need to, right? You can, but you just say, hey, here's what goes wrong literally. Here's what needs to happen instead. And so we're going to enable that.
Right. Thanks for that.
Very cool. That's a very cool product. I think that the AI space needs more surrounding toolkit. And obviously there's tons of startups doing this.
I'm surprised that so many are doing it in-house and they don't have somebody who just
Well, and this is the problem. I think like every one of these companies as a user of OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever wants to go find a great AI engineer, but there are too few who have actually worked with large language models, understand the sensitivities, understand actually deploying them in production. And so you need third-party platforms to kind of be what can't be a human at every single keyboard.
Yeah. A lot of them don't want to give their data to OpenAI and stuff too. Sam's on a warpath.
Next founder up, or one more?
No, I had something funny. I'll save it for next break.
All right, next break. All right, we're up for the next founder. What's your name?
My name is Fayam.
Fayam. Tell us, you have a minute. Fayam, what are you building?
So I'm Fayam. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Blaze. We're building peer-to-peer payments for digital nomads. Our vision is a world where you can drop into any country on the planet and pay anyone you meet easily, quickly, and affordably. We do this by wrapping the USDC stablecoin in a UX that's as easy to use as Venmo or Cash App, and we're driving community-driven growth through the BLZ token. We're a team of repeat founders that have previously scaled startups from zero to $1 million in ARR. We've led teams at companies like Spotify, Artsy, and Bitpanda. We've already raised $200,000 in grants and angel checks, have several commitments towards the round we're raising right now. We recently got accepted into a top 3 accelerator program based in San Francisco, whose name I'm not yet allowed to name publicly.
Does it rhyme with no?
And we have an MVP that's live for citizens of the US and Mexico. We're going live in Mexico City very soon.
Good job. Paulina, stay between us. Stay between me and Anthony, because we're gonna fight about this one. You want to go first?
Why use USDC?
As opposed to USDT?
Well, people internationally don't want to use the regulated US coins, so why use that one?
I would say there's multiple reasons. One thing is that it's perhaps the most reliable stablecoin on the market. And
why?
Because it's run by regulated entities with audited financials.
But isn't that actually a risk?
It depends on the way you look at it. I would say that if I have the choice of backing my customers' money in an unregulated entity versus a regulated entity that has audited financials, personally, I feel more comfortable with the audited transparency.
But Tether's not unaudited. Tether has more transparency than others. It's bigger, it's been around longer, and the actual regulation causes issues. It's why regulated banks fail, right? Like, if you think about it, why did the banks fail? It's because
Did the banks fail?
Yeah. First Republic, right? Signature Bank, etc. The government mandated that they had to go buy treasuries, and so they literally wiped out billions of dollars, except for the government saved them, right? The government stepped in. So if you think of internationally, if you look at adoption, USDT is going up, USDC is going down. I love the guys at Circle, big fan, right? But I just look at the market data, and if USDT adoption's going up, and you go talk to users, they say they don't want to use the U.S. regulated coin because they'll think of it as like the government coin. So how do you convince them to use the coin?
Yeah, I would say 3 short things. The first thing is that we've constructed the app in such a way that you don't need to know what you're using. So that's part of the appeal, is that we're making it very user friendly. You don't even really know you're using USDC unless you're a crypto person and want to know. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I think there's a good argument to be made in either case. Personally, like I said, I think the way that Circle is set up is more comfortable for me. And the third thing is that in the long run, we'd like to build up to scale and issue our own stablecoin. That gives us more control over the revenue that we generate and also the features that we can offer to people on top of that stablecoin. So I think it's a great place to get started and build initial volume, but that's not the long-term trajectory. It's not a central pinpoint for what we're doing.
And what was the coin that you guys are launching?
BLZ, Blaze. So the idea is to drive community-driven growth through the Blaze token. So if you're a customer who's using Blaze, and you share it with a friend, or let's say you onboard a business, as there's a business payments platform that we're building as well. If you onboard a business, you have an opportunity to earn Blaze tokens in proportion to the revenue generated by the entity that you brought into the network. So, for example, if you onboard a business that does 100,000 in volume every month on the platform, you might be able to get 10% of that through the Blaze token. And then if you hold that token, you'd also be able to share in the revenue that's generated by the network overall. So our vision really is to make this a very global product. And I think the way that you do that is by inclusion, by giving people incentives to grow it in their local principalities in a way that sitting in a room in New York or San Francisco, don't have eyes on.
So are you going to register the token?
I think, the legal approach to it is something that we're going to need to really fine tune before we take it to market. Right now, the way that I'm thinking about doing it is that probably we're going to maybe need to exclude American customers from the initial version of the token. Because anyway, I think the biggest opportunities for community-driven growth are in places like Latin America, Southeast Asia. And let's see, we'll have to see how the regulatory environment, evolves here.
And who is the target demographic again?
So we're taking a kind of concentric approach to the cross-border payment space where we're very enthusiastic about digital nomads as our initial beachhead market for multiple reasons, including that they experience the pain points very frequently. If you're just hanging out with international people, it's a pain in the ass to pay them. You're very excited when you find out that there's a better way to do it. They're also very evangelical. They're people who, if you build something that they really love, they'll tell people about it. But then once you have that foundation in the market, I think there's great opportunity to expand out to bigger adjacent markets like expats and remittances and different kind of business payments.
And Revolut does not do the job.
Revolut, I would say, has been a great product in Europe. That it's Europe. I mean, yeah, I think that they recently tried to expand to America. I don't know too many Americans using it. And I know that they've set a global kind of vision on their website. So I think Revolut's a very solid product, but I think it's kind of like become a little complicated by this point. I think there's an opportunity for a very simple Venmo or Cash App type experience that just abstracts away all the cross-border hassles and then has this opportunity for the community to earn revenue by helping that network. I think there's a real 10x opportunity relative to traditional finance apps in there.
Have any of these community-driven token projects gone well?
Well, that's a matter of debate.
So no. Here's my question. It's interesting because I think you have part of me interested. Okay. As a very...
The left half or the right half?
Well, so listen, I'm very anti-Web3. Okay. I think most things in the space don't work and don't deliver value and are speculation driven. And then you had me a little bit on this whole concept of like cross-border payments, Wise, Revolut, all these things have friction still. I actually think friction is a good thing. So I'm not sure I'm still all the way there. But you had me at the conceptual level. If I didn't believe friction was a good thing, I'm a left of center liberal, I'm paternalistic. So I don't think stuff should be frictionless. But if I did, I would like your product, which is part of my investor brain. It goes, maybe this will exist because philosophically, some people want a frictionless payment system to exist. But then you mentioned a token. And revenue off of community-driven growth and this shared growth concept. And I just go, if it's good enough, why immediately become unappealing to people like me? So why?
Well, I mean, to be transparent with you, I think from what I've learned from speaking to investors in the Web2 and Web3 spaces is that you kind of have to choose a team. I think that's the way that, unfortunately, it is right now. I wish it weren't that way. But when I speak Web3 to Web2 people, they sometimes have a little bit of the reaction you're expressing. When I speak Web2 to Web3 people, they sometimes have the opposite reaction.
But you're one of the 1% or less of pitches where you actually do have my intellectual understanding as to why you have a good idea. I might not agree that it should exist politically.
We agree.
We agree?
Yeah, you shouldn't do the token.
Yeah.
The token is... it's basically trying to recreate, like, what's the fastest growing payment app in history?
PayPal.
I don't know, PayPal.
Yeah, PayPal. Oh. PayPal, right?
Yeah.
And what do? They figured out how to pay people to onboard. Right? So give $10, get $10, give $5, whatever the amounts were. And so they have that mechanism, but they didn't use a token. So like, first of all, that token, I'm not a lawyer, but in the US probably illegal. Yeah. So if you stay out of the US, okay, you maybe can use it. But then what ends up happening is a part that people don't give enough credit to early on is what's going to happen. You're going to launch a token. Right? And what's going to happen? You're going to onboard people, and the token's going to go up. And then guess what everyone's going to do? They're going to be like, I don't give a about this token. They're going to sell it,
right?
And the token's going to go down. And then all of those users who are starting to come in, they're going to lose money on the token. And then they're going to be like, oh, don't use Blaze because I lost money on Blaze. And it hurts the brand.
Yeah.
So like, it sounds good in terms of like the network effect, right? Because theoretically it should work. The problem is that you're giving people a thing. It's kind of like you're giving them a Chuck E. Cheese token, right? What do? They go cash it in and when they leave. No one goes home with the Chuck E. Cheese tokens.
I did.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Except for my wife, I guess.
Yeah.
But like you understand that it's like a currency in this room, but you go cash it in before you leave, right? And so same thing here is a lot of these like community tokens, people get onboarded, but also the other thing that happens is like yield farming is a great example. You attract the wrong type of users early on because what ends up occurring is yield is 2,000%. Guess who's going to come get it? All these like mercenaries, looking for 2,000% return.
Right.
Well, as more people on board, the return goes down. So you go from 2,000 to 1,000. Then all the people who wanted 2,000 are like, well, this place, it used to be 2,000. Now it's 1,000. It dropped 50%.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this other one just popped up that is 2,000. So they all leave. Right. And then it drops to 100%, then 50, and then you're down to like 10% or whatever. And all of those users just left to go somewhere else because the next guy shows up and goes, well, I'll give you 2,000%. And so you attract like mercenaries, not missionaries. And so if you just remove the whole token, you take out all of that nonsense, and then you just focus on like, go find the digital nomads and make them love the product and the brand. And like, sure, maybe it's a little bit slower growth in the beginning, but they're going to stay. And that's the problem with the payment apps is everyone has retention problem, right? And so if you can keep the retention, who cares if you only grow one user a day? If you do that forever and keep them all, you're eventually big, right? And so same thing, it's just like, just focus on the retention. Don't try to like hack the growth because it'll lead to like that.
Yeah, that's the way you'd get me is it's so easy when I'm abroad that I download it. If you make it, it's a question we don't have time for, but like if we had more time, I would ask you something about how I would deposit out of the app. And that's where I'd go, oh, I'm probably not a good user because I'm not interested in depositing out. But if you made it so easy that I actually don't mind, I do have a Blaze account and I already have the auto deposit, so I don't have to live in any token or any crypto whatsoever, then I might download the app because you're so focused on UX, which feeds that retention mechanism, which allows you to live in this nice 2.5 space or whatever you want to call the hybrid between 2 and 3.
That's what Venmo does, right? Venmo attaches to your bank account, and when you pay someone, you don't actually have the money in the account. It pulls from your bank account, right?
Or Venmo for everybody. If we're global Venmo, right? Like that should be the pitch.
Yeah, like Strike, I'm sure you're familiar, right? Like Strike basically uses the Bitcoin rails. It takes dollars, and then let's say you want euros or
Stripe?
yen. Strike, STRIKE, right? So like when I go to pay you, it's just auto converting out of my bank account dollars to whatever. And so you receive a different currency. It's like agnostic. But the magic there is I don't have to have tons of money sitting trapped in an app, right? It's like Starbucks has how many, it's got like a couple $1 billion sitting on their app. Like cool for Starbucks, they're making money, but like all those users, like I want that money. So if you can make it where it just auto pulls from your bank account and then auto deposits on the other side, and you're just the rails, people would love it.
We don't have time for more, but this is super interesting. You got us going.
Thank you guys.
Polina, you want to tell us what you got?
Yeah, my friend Caroline will cringe because she's heard this like 17 billion times. But Anthony actually had a really good idea for a dating app.
Oh, wait, pitch it.
I will fund anyone who can build this. You have to show me a prototype.
so many
I'll give you
people-
$100,000. Seriously.
Pitch it.
It's called Authentic. And the entire app, there's no text. When you download the app, you have to hold down the screen and a random question pops down and you have to answer it. You get one shot, no retakes, and you answer 3 to 5 of them. Every 30 days, you have to answer new questions. So you change your look, we're going to know. You change your fucking voice, we're going to know. It's everything. And then you could imagine people would sit there and just, it's like American Idol, but for your neighbors. Like you just watch them answer questions over and over and over again, but you get to hear their voice, their intonation, their mannerisms. Like it's like the true authentic person.
So my first startup was called Job Hero, and it was a CRM for job seekers. But before we were Job Hero, me and my 2 co-founders after college sat together in a cafe and we came up with, what if we brought the like 80s, 90s game show dating thing, but to an app? And the whole idea was it's a series of questions. You have time limitations. You have an ability to as one side or the other decide what set of questions should be distributed to the other side, and it's sequenced, so there's a little bit of tournamenting that can happen along the way. I really like this idea.
Yeah, literally.
Someone
If somebody
build it.
built a prototype and shows it to me, I'll give you $100,000 to keep building it.
And I'll take a %. All right, next up, what is your name?
My name is Valentin.
Say it one more time.
Valentin. You can call
Valentin.
me Val or Valentine.
Are you ready to pitch and give it some feedback?
I am.
Then tell us, what are you building? You have a minute.
Cool. How much do we know about the life of our parents, our grandparents, or even like our
Oh,
brothers
I love
and
this
sisters?
idea. Fun day.
Thanks. Yeah, so the dreams they have when they were kids, like the feeling they had when they first drove their car, or like the story of their first friendship. In my case, not a lot. So I've built an app to help people collect the stories and like archiving the memories of the people we love the most. It basically turns the daunting task of exploring family history into a fun and enjoyable experience, and do that before it's too late, right? So once you open the app, you have guided prompts that helps you like bring back memories. Then you record them hitting a button, talking simply to the app, and then there's an AI that just like transcribes it, put data on it, and enable to like recreate the detailed timeline of your life. Basically, the goal is to help every family member with its own AI biographer, right?
That's a minute. But you did such a good job. I think we have a lot more we want to talk about. I didn't give you a warning. I was so lost in the pitch, I forgot to look at the time.
So I did this manually with my great grandmother before she died, and I just like asked her questions, and I learned things about her life that I never knew. But I don't know why I keep getting targeted with exact types of companies like this about like record the things. But what is different about yours? Is it that the AI is transcribing it?
Yeah, basically it's like, what do you do with those like recordings afterwards, right? You need to transcribe it. You need to want to turn it into something. Maybe it's going to be a biography. Maybe it's going to be an album, photo album or whatnot. So basically it's like removing this whole like friction out of the equation, so you can just focus and asking the questions to the people that you know.
So it's an app on my phone, not on my grandmother's phone.
Yeah. On your phone, you can interview your grandma. You can use it for yourself, and everybody in the family can do it. That way, the idea is to really get like a better family tree, aka a family tree with proper stories in it, which like we don't have, right? We have like a bunch of names, maybe a profession here and there, but that's it. It doesn't really give you anything about your cultural and your emotional legacy, right? And that's the point.
So I don't think that is that interesting as like a company. It's like more like a feature, right?
False.
Well, no, hold on. So like it's basically a transcription service, right? For like a specific wrapper for like a use case. But I think what's more interesting is if you can get people to do it, how do you connect? Like I talked to, my great grandfather or something, and he tells me a bunch of stories, but actually if I get it, like that's kind of valuable. But it's really valuable if everyone in the family tree gets it.
Of course.
And then you can start to, put it together. So I think a lot about one of the ideas that I've been thinking about and trying to find a company is like an immutable family tree. So like where this came from is if you take like the Bitcoin blockchain, it's supposed to be this like immutable public ledger, right? Yeah. The same way that like when the English came over and they hit Roatan and they carved their names in the tree, right, to be like we were here. Well, like nobody fucking went and saw the tree, right? Like there's tourists today or whatever, but like their ancestors didn't know, whatever, right? And so what we do today, though, is saved on the internet. Now, if you upload a photo to Instagram, maybe Instagram will be around in 20 years or not. We don't know, right? So there's potential data that can get lost along the way, and it's very unstructured. But if you're able to actually create, again, use just Bitcoin blockchain because it's what I know, you could write into the blockchain and be like, I was involved early on. Like I was a pioneer in this. No one can ever take that off the blockchain. And so 2,000 years from now, somebody does some research and they're like, my fucking great-great-great-great-grandfather was involved in this. But like, forget the blockchain for a second. How do you take that same idea of like a genealogy that can't be changed and then allows people easily to access it? And if you think of Ellis Island, it kind of sort of is there in the books. Yeah. But it's very much an analog version. So like, how do you begin to digitize things? And if you build it, and if you can actually get one of the best like trees then all of a sudden you have data, but you also can start to attach multimedia. Like you just build it all out, and it almost becomes like the greatest story the world ever heard is the truth.
Wow. That is a great idea. I mean, like,
Except the blockchain part.
Yeah,
I don't think the blockchain is actually the right thing, but it's just like the idea
no,
of
but it's the
could
idea
you
of
put
a
it somewhere?
time-proof technology, right? Like, how do you do a vault, like a digital vault that is like time-proof? And so, it's one of the main challenges that like we need to think about when tackling this thing. So my point was to like originally you can just like print it on paper, right? Or just have like any kind of like you can also from audio notes do vinyl records, right? Because like let's say we don't get electricity in like 100 and 200 years because like there's a big shutdown. You could still like turn the vinyl and get the stories there. So there's one way where it could go like over digital, and there's another way where it could go like completely broke.
What you're doing though is like the passing of stories via like word of mouth is how stories have been passed for thousands of years.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So like that's still how it happens, right?
Exactly.
And what ends up occurring though is we have the technology now to start writing it into like digital stone.
Yeah.
So how do you convert the word of mouth to like proven fact so that you can't go back in history? Like you can't go teach somebody's great grandfather about their family, but everything from here forward, you can be the like proof of record for whatever's known at the moment. And then really what you're doing is you're applying for the next 100 years.
Yeah.
All those people are looking at your, record book.
Absolutely. I mean, that is like, my point is to really start now, right? Because we have the technology and then like build it from the way down, right? Instead of looking the way up. Right now in the genealogy market, it's a lot of like family trees with like Ellis Island and everything. And then it was the trend of the DNA testing. But what does it say about you DNA testing? Okay, you're 12% like Spanish. Cool. What do I do with that?
I forget who was the person that there was one night I was like Googling something and all of a sudden I was like, wait, am I related to, and I actually, I think I remember, but I don't want to say. And I was like, holy shit. Like, I'm about to email that person right now and be like, yo, I'm your long lost like great grandson.
Yeah.
Right. And then it ended up being wrong
And
because
they would be like, oh crap.
because the genealogy trees online are like kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
Right. It's like parsed together, whatever. But if you can create a proven track record that people
That's what
trust.
I want to do. Like the detailed timeline told by you, recorded through the AI biographer feature that just records everything. And then you decide what you share to whom.
So Valentin, here's the thing that I want to encourage. Regardless of whether you go down the path, which I actually agree is a good path, I want to hear more, at least as half of your pitch, even if the other half becomes more about this long term, as to how you're going to get people to adopt this. Because I've also heard this pitch a couple different times.
For sure.
And I'd love to hear about the UX. How are you going to get the people
an idea.
involved? Ooh. But like, this is the thing, right? How are you going to get people involved is the pitch, right? It's not a challenge, by the way. It's more like that should be part of your story is we're going to make it, there's a daily prompt to your grandmother. Like that's the thing I want to hear you say, because I think that's the challenge.
That's what I have currently in the MVP. There is like a daily prompt sent to everyone.
Right.
You can also send it to people to get information, because the most valuable questions, I'm guessing, is the ones you ask to your grandmother, and they're very contextual. I cannot guess what is like interesting.
Yeah, you should
to
use
you.
journalists to craft the question.
I was going to say, like, especially if you're using AI, the thing that I would use this, for example, if there was like a social app element to it. So
Yeah.
for example, you know how you go on Cameo, and I love watching the videos of people like, oh my God. So
True.
like maybe you create like mini documentaries with the AI or whatever on like an Instagram type thing.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a place where like I can go to watch other people's grandparents like tell this wild story of the 20s, you know?
True.
That's part of what, like, some TikTok fun about people like talking to their parents and their grandparents.
Yeah.
It actually has a very good, similar feeling. I love that.
Absolutely.
For time's sake, we're going to have to stop here, but good job.
Thank you, guys.
That's such an interesting space, and I think like the reward that I get from watching, because like I was born in Iran, came here when I was a year old. I don't know that it would be useful for me, but I would totally, the social element of like I already feed on it in TikTok in some ways of like seeing stories told that otherwise feel like they will be lost to time, and there's that moment where you're like, oh, this is really interesting, and I'm glad I got to hear it.
The past is defined by stories. The future is going to be defined by truth. And one of the key components is like your family story is bullshit. Merely because
The retelling,
well, just because of the mechanism in which it was told. Right. Somebody told somebody who told somebody who told somebody, and then it's like, literally like, oh, grandpa whoever did this, and then like how many times did somebody like, I talked to my grandpa, he was like, I never did that. Right. And so the second that you can start to create like a chain of truth, but not like in like the crypto bullshit way, like actually just have a thing where a kid 20 years from now can go and say, okay, I want to understand, who my parents, my grandparents, my great grandparents, and it doesn't have to be a lot of information. It just has to be enough where they could like know their names. Right. Where did they live? Right. Like this stuff is now all publicly available. And so you can start to build it in a really interesting way. You wouldn't use it?
I just think the qualitative elements are more interesting.
Yeah, but I think that you've got to get the hard data first, and then you can start to layer in the qualitative stuff. But
it could be a go-to-market approach to say, oh, it's so fun and entertaining and it's storytelling, and that's why people decide. Because I'm not sure people natively have the want you have of like the truth and the genealogy, but they will give it to you if part of the experience is like,
I was up in Ellis Island. I was like, where are the people at? Like, let's fucking find these motherfuckers.
I mean, it is a super interesting thing, by the way, because it also gets to the DNA testing. We don't have time to super get into it, but I think the mixture of all of this is the most interesting product. All right, next founder up. Let's hear it. All right, that's your mic. Are you ready to give us your pitch and hear some feedback?
I am.
Well, tell us. You have a minute. What are you building?
Hi, I'm Hillary Lear. I'm the CEO at Quiller. There are less than 5,000 hours between right now and Election Day. And with so much at stake this November, campaigns cannot waste time on really tedious tasks like typing all their content from scratch. Me and a team of top political tech operatives have created Quiller. It's a generative AI tool that allows campaigns and organizations to create customized, quality content from scratch. We're LLM agnostic, but we've created a tool that we've trained on thousands of pieces of content written by and for Democratic campaigners. We've raised $2.2 million to run at this to make a big difference in the 2024 cycle, but we don't want to just stop there because there's a lot of other organizations that can benefit from strong, quality, responsible AI tools. So we're growing into the nonprofit sector. So a lot of our work so far has been to develop Quiller, to bring it to market, to grow into the 2024 cycle. We're working with campaigns, committees, top organizations in the political arena, but we're also working with nonprofits now, like Everytown for Gun Safety, Human Rights Campaign, and Supermajority.
Good job.
How much of the content is personalized to the person? How much of the content is personalized to the person versus it's like, hey, we take a message and we blast it out to 5,000 people?
That's where we would really love to grow. Right now, we're able to create content that's customized by tags, but it's ultimately up to the user to add that to their segmented database in their CRM.
Big D Democratic or little d Democratic?
Unfortunately, they're so confusing these days, right? And it shouldn't be the case. But in today's polarized climate and the political tech market, you have to actually pick a side. And so we're big D Democratic.
Super interesting. I'm a big D Democrat, so I don't mind it. I'm curious to hear you've raised money. I'm surprised somewhat, even though I'm a big D Democrat and in tech, because I would think that people would have a really big market challenge in deciding that you're venture backable. Maybe we have opinions on that, but before we
did they invest or do they pseudo donate? Like, are they political people trying to support an outcome?
Yeah, so we're a traditional Delaware C Corp. We took the B Corp election, but part of it is that we were incubated from a VC firm called Higher Ground Labs, which is a traditional VC that invests in progressive political tech startups. I'm an operating partner there. We've moved 60 million to 70 startups that are building tools that have direct applications in the political and nonprofit space. We've had several great exits from that space. They're pushed to achieve a lot of scale quickly, but there's also a lot of applications for the creation of these types of tools for volunteer management, data and analytics, persuasion testing that have applications in other markets. So it's actually a great place to start a business and then grow when the election cycle ends and your revenue drops off.
Could you hurt the Democrats?
Sorry?
Could you, well, think about attack surface, right? And so in politics, it's very much like a chess game, right? And by the way, both parties are probably going to use similar technology.
Correct.
But if you're publicly saying that you're doing it, can the independents or Republicans attack the Democratic Party by saying, look, they're using AI generated content. They don't really care about you. It's all this inauthentic bullshit that they're like stuffing down your throat. I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but like the attack vector, could it actually hurt because you're being public versus like operate kind of quietly in the background?
Yeah, no, we want to be really public and front and center with the tool that we've built because we've done so much work to build it responsibly, to create really quality content that doesn't do spammy messaging or some of the misleading tactics that we do see being employed across the space. This is finally a resource, especially for down ballot candidates, to actually have really quality, relevant content that is meeting that demand for accuracy, for engagement and personalization, which is, I think, where best use cases of responsible and AI politics can go. So I think being front and center in that is significant, but we also are being asked as the first generative AI tool to go to market in the political space to help draw some of those lines in partnership with a lot of thought leaders across the space. So we have a lot of best practices that we've built into the tool, a requirement for human in the loop, a lot of training that we do with our partners on how to use the technology responsibly, how to engage in a new type of copy editing so that the end customers, whether they're voters or donors, have content that AI was used in the drafting process, but not a finalization. There's always a human in the loop. And we're really proud to stand behind that publicly, even though there are some outside of our individual companies, a lot of risks for AI, particularly this cycle, that are getting a lot of the attention when we talk about AI in politics.
And so practically, how does it work? I select like which issues I'm interested in, and then I receive messaging pertaining to those exact issues.
That would be so interesting as a place for us to go. But right now, it's a tool for the campaign staffers to quickly train the model on their talking points, platform position, mission statement, and then in a matter of seconds, they can generate fundraising email, engagement email, op-ed, press release,
it's
scripts.
automated content creation, which is part of.
And right now, there's like copywriters and a team that drafts this stuff.
Yeah, and so this is a booster for those teams that are already producing just dozens of pieces of content every day. But eventually, I think there could be a world where this is involved in a greater level of personalization. That would just be such a more satisfactory experience for the end voter.
I mean, it's very interesting because there's like a whole policy debate as to like, are they going to outlaw this being used, right? Like having a human in the loop kind of changes it. It's like AI with a human. So it's, automated Canva or whatever. But on the other side, if you just let the machines basically blast constituents on both sides, it's kind of like, at what point are you voting for people, or are you just voting for like who has the better machine? The argument could be also like that's kind of what is happening on Facebook, right? Is like kind of who's better targeted, whatever, on that stuff.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think there are some really interesting futurist conversations and explorations of long-term, what are the applications of AI in democracy? What's the appropriate place of human-led and machine-assisted processes within? As first to market with a practical tool, what we really want to do is just support teams and human-led campaigning and having a really efficient process that's even more inclusive, that allows more diverse candidates, first-time candidates to actually be able to run for office, do fundraising, make it through the primary. So it's all assisting human-led processes, but long-term, there are some really interesting conversations.
So I'm like hardcore independent. But as an investor, if I was you, I would collect the first party data. Do you know why Trump sold the hats?
Ooh, emails?
Because he got the targeting data and they were incredible on Facebook with it. So they could retarget and stuff, right? And so it's again, from a business perspective, it's very intelligent as to like how do you get first party data to then use retargeting of these tools. And if you're going to create content, you want to push towards personalization. Like how do you almost get people to raise their hand and give you pieces of data that you then can use to create the personalized information?
You're integrated with like things like NGP-Van and things like that?
Yeah, we are. We have an integration with NGP-Van now, along with other CRMs like Action Network. We also export to Google Docs. So if they have a principal or a VIP that wants to approve all their content, there's an easy way to do that. Right now, it's a one-way integration so that you create your content in Quiller, push it into your CRM. But we're also exploring having a Quiller button directly within the CRM, which would make it a lot easier for end users.
Super interesting. Thanks, Larry.
I'm glad you know about Van.
I was in Democratic politics back in the day. So
Nice.
The tools are terrible and there's a lot of money in it. I still, this is an interesting conversation we can have later. I'm still curious about like the money to make something venture backable in one side of politics, but it's really large.
I don't want to speak for you, but I think that it's a venture fund that's looking for some financial return, but it's also like there's like hey, we want certain outcomes in elections, which makes sense why they would invest.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, politics is just about getting people to do stuff, right? And so if you can take a product from that early market and then apply it somewhere else, then it's a home run.
Can I tell you one other thing that's going to happen in politics? It's going to scare the out of people.
Oh, okay.
Companies like you are going to start giving advisory equity to candidates. Because if you're successful in helping them get elected, it's a way to backdoor campaign finance and donations. That's how Trump's got $5 billion right now, right, is basically took a company public. And so I think that startups that tangentially are related to politics are going to realize it's not a donation when it's not worth anything, right? Like if you give somebody $1, but if you can create wealth very quickly, it's a way to give a candidate more money that then they can personally put into their campaign. And so like I think that they'll probably try to figure out rules around it, but I think like that whole wave is coming and people are going to just be losing their minds on both sides of the aisle trying to figure out how to like create the rules.
It is an interesting space. I do think that there's so much regulation around campaign finance and donations that are equivalents of specific amounts, but it's important to keep an eye on and make sure you stay on the right side of it.
Some people put $1,000 in their IRA and then it becomes worth $1 billion, right? And so if you can do that as a startup, startups are uniquely positioned to create wealth very quickly. And so if you're able to do that, now all of a sudden it's in the candidate's hands. Even they could do secondary transactions. So you give them $1,000, all of a sudden it's worth $100,000. They do a secondary transaction. You didn't donate 100,000. You donated 1,000. You're below the limit, and so it's like I think Trump opened this like Pandora's box that
I think only one side is likely to do that pretty frequently.
I don't know.
It sounds like that might come back to them, but I'd love to talk to you more about it because my IRA is not worth $1 billion. It's nice to meet y'all. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Okay. For the final founder, that's a super interesting space because I think this is like, to your point, yes, there's like a mission behind it, but then it's the question of is it venture backable, which I think is also like a question now more than ever.
So it's just war. It's just politics.
No, but I'm saying like 2 years ago, I think your answer of like, they want to venture invest and they want to like support a cause. Is that going to be a common mutual like singular want anymore now that startups just don't grow as fast?
Capital is a weapon in a war of politics. Okay. And so $2.2 million placed, if they're successful, is like an incredible precision strike.
But
in the
essentially
world
what you're
of
saying is
politics.
it's not venture, or I guess it is venture backable purely on the value eventually placed on the market cap of a business from a political perspective, not really from a revenue perspective.
Correct. It's not about making, I don't know about this specific company, but I think a lot of people who do this, they're realizing like capitalism is the greatest incentive system to drive outcomes. So donating, you're basically donating to people who historically have been bad capital allocators. So it's better if you give it in a capitalistic way to an entrepreneur and you say, go solve the same problem. The campaign isn't usually as good as the company. And you can only give so much to the campaign. You can give unlimited to the company. So like, if you were going to give $2.2 million anyways, like actually, like I literally think that the whole truth media thing completely changed politics. Like there will be a pre and post era.
100%, unless
and all of a sudden candidates now are going to get arms race of funding.
Well, with that very lighthearted topic in mind, last pitch, Ring, come on up. Welcome. Tell everybody your name.
Thank you. My name is Ron, founder of KidSmart AI.
Ooh, okay. Ron and I have chatted as well, just like Hero, so I'm excited to hear about our conversation infused in this pitch. Are you ready to give us your pitch and hear some feedback?
Excellent, yes. And
right,
I have changed the name since last week, so.
Awesome. Tell us, what are you building?
So I'm building KidSmart's AI, safe, educational, engaging AI specifically designed for the young child use case. And then selling that into enterprises in industries like education, toys and games, and content generation. I'm Ron. I have a PhD in physics from Harvard. And after that, I've led AI and data science teams, both in San Francisco, New York, and Europe. The company... So far we're both building and aligning AI that is specifically using our proprietary data, specifically for the young child use case. And we've launched our first pilot, and now we're seeking to grow the team. Thank you.
All right, good job.
You're a mom.
Wait, so what is the content?
So we do speech, text, and image generation, all aligned to what children need. So there are quite a number of cases where
So not Coco Melon.
Not what? Yeah, not Pokemon. Yeah, no, it could be, but our initial use cases are surrounded around education. But toys and games and content generation are generally useful places for AI to intersect as well. But our foundations are in education. As we're building safe, educational, engaging, because that's what we think parents want from
Is the
AI.
idea to use AI to make it personalized to the child and what they're learning?
Yes, absolutely. So both personalized to what they're learning and to how they're growing, what they're engaging with.
You're a dad. What do you think?
That was good.
What is the interface? Is it text or audio?
We're doing speech, text, and image generation, but we're selling that to enterprises that then use it to develop products. So we do have a product called Reading Rocket, which is a literacy use case for this technology, but it's really a showcase for the technologies that will allow other companies to see what they can do with this technology and then purchase the technology from us, license the technology, similar to OpenAI, license the technology from us in order to use for their specific use cases and products. So it's a general purpose, horizontal technology, AI technology that's dedicated specifically to the needs of the children. Today, the tech companies that exist, the big tech companies that are really driving the innovation in the AI space are building to be smarter or as smart as me and you. That's not what a child needs. And so they may solve for this use case accidentally, but if you design for it, you can actually solve these problems today for children.
How do you get the feedback from the kid? Like the kid is talking to the speech?
Yeah.
Okay.
So today, the one use case that we're working with today is children learn to read by talking the words out loud, and you care a lot about the pronunciation of the words. If you look at all of the transcription models that are on the market today, they're doing word transcription, not sound pronunciation transcription. It's a different use case. And so we're building technologies around that in order to help with the assessment of children. That's just one use case that you can see what we're building, what Google, OpenAI, et cetera, are building are for very good business use cases, but it doesn't fit into this use case. And so we can build that, and then we sell that to the companies that care about that use case, and specifically the age range of children that care about those use cases. That's one use case. Another use case that's very hard for AI technologies to address today is you can say, write a story for a first grader, but it won't use the language that child, when you said personalization, the exact language that child uses today, the word set, the set of words, the vocabulary that they know. We can do that. We can generate stories that use that exact set that they know much easier than the other technologies that are available. So those are just some examples of the ineffectiveness of today's technologies. And so we're building effective technologies for those use cases.
So I think it exists in this. My feedback exists in some of the same places. I think you've improved the pitch significantly.
Oh, thank you.
But I think I want you to go even further on the same levels, because I think all their questions were around use case and customer.
Yep.
And so if you described yourself instead as an AI platform building models and model assistants around speech, text, there's a third, image generation.
Yep.
And the issue is there are a bunch of education and entertainment companies that want to target AI use cases at children, but customizing these models is difficult. There's safety, there's sound, there's tone of voice, there's this, there's that. And so they can't easily do this. They're investing a lot of money in it. And so just, as easy as using one of OpenAI's models through API, they'll be able to use our APIs to develop these products much faster, much more quickly, et cetera. Live in the customer, live in the solution, rather than, I think this goes to, I've given this feedback before, where the mission can sometimes overpower the pitch.
Yep.
It's doing it here, right?
Got
And
it.
your product is so vivid once you understand it that you should allow your product to overpower the pitch instead.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm just waiting for you to ask me whether we should get it or not.
Oh, yeah.
Well, but it's integrated with it. You can't just get it.
Well, we will be launching the APIs so that you can
And you have Reading Rocket.
Yeah, I do have an application that exists that is leveraging the technologies today that you can go to. I'm building a new website that will redirect as a showcase, so you can use you can actually use the log in and use the technology today to see how it works.
This is a real dumb question. We have a 2-year-old, right?
Yeah.
She don't pay attention.
Yep.
Like, she's not gonna sit in a screen and be like, that says dog, that says whatever, right? If you imagine when people are like, even when we're trying to, it's like, hey, pay attention, whatever. It's a kid. It's like, how do you account for that where the model is, shows something, they read it. It's very obvious, like the one-to-one focused communication. But then you've got like in a kid's environment, they see a toy, they, whatever. Like, how do you?
Yeah, so the original product was directed for teachers. And so that's what the showcase product does today is it's a teacher use case, and the teachers can, enforce and so that's how I solve the original problem. But again, it can, as I'm a technology person, not a product person, that's why I want product people to understand these are the capabilities of the technology. This is where the technology succeeds. This is the noise levels it can succeed in, and have really creative product people build around these technologies. Because I think those problems, those user interface problems, UX, UI problems, are very solvable, but they require real specialty knowledge and understanding the customer and such. And we need to give them the technology to have people go out there and build products that can do exactly that. And we can work with them in order to build the technologies so that it does work the way you would expect it to. So yeah, I think those are real problems, but I do think children want to learn. They want to interact. They're curious. And they self-drive their curiosity a lot. And the more we can help that, the better. And in all areas, not only in school, at home, et cetera. All areas, we can provide a little bit more engagement for children, a little bit more learning opportunities.
Yeah, I like this. And especially as like alternative schools and all that stuff is on the rise, I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, education, it's interesting because teachers have so I'm new to education. I've been in a lot of companies, all startups, but never education. So I've learned a lot in education in the last 4 months. And it's often described as teachers have a huge amount of expertise, but extremely limited amount of time per student. The parent or the guardian typically has a huge amount of time and a very limited amount of expertise. How do we figure out how to make that work for the child better? And these technologies should allow us to do that, to bridge that gap between the two.
Awesome. Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was our 10 founders. We have now just a few other things we're going to do, which is I'm going to read out the list of names, and everyone who's on the stream or in the crowd is going to do an audience choice. But before we do, let's do our picks because the crowd will be the...
You go first.
Okay.
Are you doing top 3 or just one?
However you feel.
Oh, okay.
I'll do my first one first. I really like Plum Defense. I think that was like a very smart product. I think the pitch could use some work, so I'm not gonna, think of that as the best pitch. But I really think that, like, from a fundamentals perspective, tools around AI allowing companies to more intelligently, kind of deploy and give their customers AI, fascinating. And obviously, the last pitch for similar reasons.
I have 3.
Yes.
Plum Defense, the genealogy one, Kindroy, and the kid one.
Yeah, Kid Smart AI, I think maybe it might have been.
I think the Plum Defense one just can be the biggest.
It definitely, from a market perspective, just sounds immense. All right. While we're getting this in, takeaways for you guys on the pitches in terms of founders and their stories.
I thought I was very nice to people. I'm surprised.
You were nicer than I expected. I agree.
I think he means like about their pitches, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is that what he meant?
No, I thought they were really good. I think it's really hard, especially because they're in another room, to come in cold. And I think like when I do that, I get really nervous. What?
You gotta be able to drop that real quick.
I know.
Anywhere
That's
you are. What do you mean cold?
But I've never thought about like startup pitches could benefit from like public speaking, you know?
Well, and this is where a lot of them want to demo it week over week. We've
Yeah.
done this. And I go, no, it's better for you to be able to craft the skill of being able to talk about even the most visual product, but just using your words. Because if you can't do that when you're stuck on that elevator or you're talking to a customer you meet on the street, you're not going to be able to demonstrate the value of your product. It's such a big deal. And I also think the last minuteness of it, not a lot of founders don't have that. And I think that's also really key is you don't get to prep. Can you still describe all the value prop?
Yeah, it reminds me of my dad plays 1 minute chess.
Mm-hmm.
No,
But it's-
Fisher. 1
Fisher,
minute chess.
which is like the
Don't disrespect that man,
things
Evo,
are-
if you're watching.
all the pieces are like random, so you don't know going in what you'll get. So it's kind of like
All the pieces are messed up on the table, and it's 1 minute chess. You got to beat the opponent.
I love that idea.
you have no prep.
Yeah, he's one of the world's best
Okay,
Fisher
he's not-
chess. No, he literally is. He's ranked on chess.com. He's literally one of the world's best Fisher chess 1 minute players in the world.
Very cool. Very, very cool. We have to get him up here.
He would be embarrassed.
Well, we have our winners. The first one is what I think was Kid Smart AI, or what was used to be known as Reading Rocket. And Ron, last pitch. Congratulations. They're not here to hear it. Probably in the room. I think the founders are very much loving each other's company. And then Plum Defense was the other winner. I think this was a fantastic group of people who, ultimately a lot of these businesses felt very real today. And one of the things I really think is fantastic about getting to get on this stage is being able to demonstrate the impact tomorrow of what you're building, being able to talk about it. All of these individuals, no matter what they were building, I could feel like I could use it tomorrow. So kudos to all the founders for building something that isn't, 6 months away. Good job, guys. And thank you to Anthony and to Polina
Thank you guys.
for being here, for giving all of that fantastic feedback and that storytelling advice. It was really a
awesome.
pleasure.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys.
See you guys next week.